Hello, hello! So, as many of you may know, we got a new patch today. So we're going to be taking a look at the patch notes. As per usual, I will be focusing on multiplayer implications, leaving campaign to the experts. Let Legend of Total War go over that. If you're here on my channel, you're probably here for multiplayer details, so let's get into it. I'll be skipping right over the Regiments of Renown, because I'll be making a video on them at a later date, once I've gotten a chance to actually get in and play with them, and see how they perform. So, let's find these changes. Where do we start? Okay, so race and balance, Beastmen, multiplayer changes. So the first sweeping change we got is all Chaos Spawn got a little bit of a price increase, about 100 extra gold, and then Beastmen Chaos Spawn got a bit of a weapon damage increase. This feels pretty bad. Spawn weren't super popular lately anyway. With the prevalence of skirmish cav and just cheap shooting, they're really squishy, so I'm not really sure why they felt the need to nerf Chaos Spawn. Beastmen getting the weapon strength buff is kind of nice, but the extra gold increase just feels pretty bad, honestly. Like, they weren't popular, so I'm not really sure why they're nerfing them. This feels like this was probably put on a to-do list back in, back before IE, before skirmish cav were all over the place and Spawn were really strong, and they only just got around to it now. Like, it just feels like a weird time to nerf Chaos Spawn. They're not that great. Giants, every variant of Giant got 20 extra armor, 50 base weapon, 50 AP, as well as getting a little cheaper. Take them up to, I think, 700 weapon strength. It is no laughing matter, but it wasn't really a matter of their damage output. That was the reason Giants aren't played. They're just massive, slow targets. So they're just wrecked by any shooting, and they just aren't very fast. They have a hard time getting the fights they want. Like, usually with these kind of single entities, you really want to be sniping your enemy opponent's characters, and you can't really do that if you're not fast. So the Giants are just still a slow lumbering target that's going to be only able to hit whatever their opponent walks into melee with them, which is usually just going to be cheap spears, so I still think Giants are probably going to be pretty lame. Another sweeping change. Minotaurs all got buffed. They got about 500 extra hit points, as well as costing a little less gold. 50 less for the shields, 50 less for the basic, and 150 less for the great weapons. I think that buff on the great weapons is massive, especially with Spawn being nerfed. Minotaurs might become the premier monstrous infantry these days, especially with only 1200 gold. Minotaur great ones will beat the ever-living daylights out of any big monsters. Excuse me. There's a little Butchers of Calcum card getting the same response, so I think it's a really nice buff for Beastmen. Minotaurs are one of their better units, so having them be a little more cost-effective is always a plus. That said, I don't think it'll be enough to bring Beastmen up to the top of the meta. That's all for Beastmen. Bretonnia, all of their cav got faster. All of their horses got faster, which is pretty good, because heavy cav relies quite a bit on shock damage, which is increased based on your speed. So they'll actually do a lot more damage on the charge against, primarily against infantry, though it will help against other things as well. So this is a huge buff for Bretonnia. All of your cav's damage output and ability to choose their engagements all got increased, because that's what speed is. It's the ability to choose engagements. So this is pretty big. We'll have to see how this actually plays out. This is fine. They just took off the base melee damage buff for this item because he has 100% AP, so the base melee damage buff gave him literally nothing. And they upped the duration a little bit. I mean, Green Knight was already good. This just makes him a little bit better. Chaos Furies, that's a nice buff. It was always weird that Chaos Furies without a mark cost the same as the marked ones, which are just objectively better, like they're just straight upgrade most of the time. So it's nice that they've got a little bit of a cheaper price. Dark Elves, I don't think they got any changes. Yeah, they didn't get any actual changes. Look at Dwarves. Or Cathay, they didn't get any changes. Greenskins, they got the giant changes, and then they got Goblin Wolf Chariots got nerfed. They just fire less now, which is just weird. Like, who was using Goblin Wolf Chariots in the first place? They're not a great unit, as far as I'm aware. Like, and then they fixed one of the RORs, which is a nice fix, but like, why would you nerf Goblin Wolf Chariots of all things? That just seems like an odd change. Alright, High Elves. This is the big one. They got a ton of changes. 25 less gold for archers, as well as archers, and 50 less gold for archers with light armor. 100 less gold for Lyrian Reavers, 100 less for Evergreen Court Guard, 100 less for the ROR Lyrian Reavers, 150 less for Phoenix Guard ROR. Lore Master of Hoth got Martial Mastery, as did the Sword Masters. Lothran Sea Guard are 50 cheaper. Sea Guard with Shields are 50 cheaper. Phoenix Guard are 100 cheaper. Shadow Walkers are 100 cheaper. Swordmaster Oath actually got a little more expensive, but they did get the Martial Mastery to make up for it, so they should have more stats now. Archer Arwar got a lot cheaper. Fireborn got 50 cheaper. Shadow Warriors got 100 cheaper. White Lion Arwar got 100 cheaper. Arwar Spearman got 50 cheaper, and the Arwar Lothan Seaguard got 50 cheaper. This is really nice. High Elves have felt overcosted for a while now, so this will be a good step in the right direction. This is exactly what I wanted to see. That said, it is missing the one buff that I really wanted to see, which was 2 White Lions. White Lions are like the best aggressive infantry option the High Elves have, and having them be a little cheaper would really open up a lot more playstyles for High Elves, where you can play a little more aggressively with those really killy infantry. Buffing your defensive stuff and archers means that High Elves will be leaning more into the more missile line kind of playstyle, you know, closer to an Empire style where you only have your infantry protecting your archers with cav to protect your flanks or contest enemy cavalry. So not necessarily a bad thing, but it does lock them into that style a little bit, but that's probably fine. It is just massive buffs across the board for High Elves. Time will tell if that actually is enough, though. I suspect this won't be enough on its own, because even for these prices, I think High Elves you could have been a lot more generous with these price decreases. I think they could go, you know, probably quite a bit cheaper on a lot of these things. High Elves units are still probably going to be a little overcosted, but this is still, like I said, definitely a good step in the right direction. Khorne. So, Bloodthirster got cheaper. Chaos Knights got cheaper. Chaos Knights with Lances got cheaper. Shrines got capped at 1. Chosen got a lot cheaper. Demon Prince got 450 gold cheaper. Knights of the Brazen Throne. This is the big one for me. Knights of the Brazen Throne are really, really good ROR. They're just so expensive. For 1900, they might be worth taking. So Knights of the Brazen Throne are the Skull Crusher ROR, and they hit really hard against infantry. When I've used them, they typically like almost one-shot most infantry on the charge, just chaff. So they can actually knock out enemy infantry real quick. So having these guys available, like being at a much more reasonable price, is a big deal for Khorne. They also got the Minotaur changes. I think Minotaurs might be a lot more prevalent for Khorne. Again, especially with the Khorne spawn nerfs and Khorne spawns still being bugged. If you're not aware, any unit with Frenzy and Unbreakable, if it starts the battle in your reinforcements, it will not have Frenzy. That's a pretty big problem for Chaos Spawn of Khorne, and a pretty big reason to take Minotaurs over them already. And Minotaurs being a lot cheaper, I could see a lot more Khorne Minotaurs being in play after this patch. Skull Crushers got cheaper. Soul Grinder got a lot cheaper. I think all the Soul Grinders got quite a bit cheaper. Spawn of Khorne got a bit of extra armor, but they also got the price increase, so I don't think you'll be seeing much Spawn of Khorne these days. I think if Khorne wants monster infantry, it will be Minotaurs. That's going to be a pretty big shift for Khorne, which wouldn't be that bad, honestly. I think Minotaurs could be a lot of fun for Khorne. Their heavy cav being buffed, it's kind of nice. I think you're still probably not going to opt for Chaos Knights. I think if you're going heavy cav, you probably do go for Knights of the Brazen Throne. I think they also fixed War of the Khorne. They buffed the War Shrine. I still think you don't use it. It's just too expensive for a pretty meager buff. And they fixed the Blood Crusher ROR so that it gives weakness to fire instead of fire resistance, which is nice. They finally do what they're supposed to do, but I think if you want elite cav, you're going for the Knights of the Brazen Throne for only 1900. They absolutely pay for themselves, especially against infantry. Will this be enough to make Khorne much better in the meta? I doubt it. Bloodthirsters aren't very good, so buffing them isn't going to help that much. Chaos Knights you never saw. I don't think you'll see them after this buff. This nerf doesn't really matter. They never brought War Shrines. Chosen with dual weapons. Every faction you would want to bring Chosen against has spells that can just delete them, so it's really hard to bring Chosen, ever. Demon Prince getting cheaper. I don't actually know what the Khorne Demon Prince does, so that might be good. I'll have to look into that. I don't recall what he does. Knights of the Brazen Throne, like I said, really good. Skull Crusher's going down. If you go for a heavy cav option that isn't Knights of the Brazen Throne, this is probably the one you go for. You probably won't be using Chaos Knights a whole lot. These guys, they hit pretty hard, but for 1700, that's still a lot of gold for a single unit. Soul Grinders, you're probably still never going to see them. Soul Grinders, of course, are just so janky. If they could target their missile attack, maybe they'd be useful, but as is, they're just really janky. It's a campaign thing. Kislev didn't get really any changes. Don't think Lizardman got any changes, except Lord Croak got cooldowns on his spells, which is fine. Lord Croak kind of fell out of the meta the last patch anyway, so I don't think this will really affect lizards. Norska. Okay, Beast of Tashnar. Oh, excuse me. 100 cheaper. You probably see these guys a lot. They're cheap anti-large dogs, so they really fill a role of light cav that Norska doesn't really have anymore, so that'll probably be, you'll probably see these guys a lot now, with a little bit cheaper. They also got the giant treatment. Still, again, you probably won't see it a whole lot, unless you're trying to beat on something like, I don't know, Kugath or a Mortise engine or a War Shrine maybe, but they're only really going to be good against those really slow, really tanky targets. Norska Ice Wolves. So they mentioned up here in the patch, like in this, that they were trying to get Norska Ice Wolves to be more like on par, like trying to fill the same role as Fleshhounds. And this is a good step. Extra melee attack, more weapon damage, more AP damage, and cheaper. I'll have to play with this to see how it feels, but if Norska Icehounds can actually fill that role of like a mid-tier, like actual decent mobility unit, that could be really, really strong for Norska, because that's what they're missing. I've said before, I don't remember if I said it on the channel, but that if Norse gets a DLC, I want to see them get a light cav option that isn't skirmish cav, so they actually have that flanking unit that can actually pressure and actually duel enemy cavalry. If Norse and Ice Wolves can fill that role, that's huge for them. That gives them better backline access, as well as better contested mobility game. That's actually huge if it actually plays well, which I think we'll have to play with it and see how much of those stats actually matter. Trolls got a bit of leadership. I think that's another sweeping change, is all Trolls got about 5 leadership. And the Norse got a little cheaper. 5 leadership on Trolls is nothing to scoff at. They're notoriously low leadership and not ITP, so they tend to rout a lot. Having that 5 extra leadership means they will just stick around and man just that little bit longer and get a few more hits in, so I don't know. Maybe they'll be a bit better. I have higher hopes for the Chaos War Trolls, which we'll get to, but I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out as well. Could be quite nice. Nurgle, Billy Thunderguff, our Chaos Giant got the same giant treatment. Cultist Nurgle, the War Shrine mount got more expensive, which is good. The War Shrines with their passive heals were really, really problematic in certain matchups, and a lot in land battles they were a really big problem. Is that pretty much free passive healing on a really, really tanky character was a problem, especially stacked with the Cultist melee debuffs. So I like this nerf. This is pretty good. Demon Prince got 450 cheaper, like all the others. Excuse me. Chaos Knights got cheaper, just like all the others. War Shrine nerf. Great and Clean One got a bit cheaper. I don't think you'll see Great and Clean Ones much either. They don't have a Mortise engine, it's not that effective as the Exalted ones. Probably still won't see much of them. Soulgrind of Nurgle getting cheaper is actually a pretty big deal. I've said before many times on stream that I hate Nurgle Soul Grinders. A lot of people like them, and I keep seeing them. And I've almost never seen them pay for themselves. But people bring them all the time because they're like your one long-range option for Nurgle and can actually pressure enemy missile pieces. And for a cheaper price, that's just straight gains. Like that, they might actually be worth taking in my opinion now. So this is actually probably the biggest buff Nurgle's gotten. They also did get the spawn nerf, which hurts Nurgle quite a bit because spawn are their only monstrous infantry option, if I'm not mistaken. I guess you have toads, but those kind of function differently. So having your premier source of mass have their pros increase feels pretty bad. I don't know what this means. Children of Nurgle is the lore passive. No longer utilizing games. Did they remove the lore passive? I haven't actually checked. If they removed the lore passive, like, why? It wasn't that impressive. Like, it was okay. It wasn't that good. But, like, why would you just remove it outright? If that's what's happening here. I'm not sure. I don't know what this means, to be perfectly honest. Ogres, they got the giant treatment. This is pretty big for ogres. They're ogres, all the ogres, basic bulls, iron guts, man-eaters, even the missiles will now have 5 capture weight instead of 3, which will help them when you are blobbing on an objective, but ogres really didn't want to be doing that anyway. Ogre bulls tend to, well, any of their infantry doesn't tend to stick around in melee fights that long, so they don't really like blobbing on objective. They tend to do better playing a kite style, or just a gunline style, where you use your shooting to actually clear the objective and then waltz on the point over their dead corpses. So there are niche situations where this will help, but this isn't going to address the major issue of ogres. It'll help in those late game scenarios where you're just trying to shove capture rate on an objective because you just need to take an objective before the time runs out. Skaven. There's a bunch of nice campaign buffs to Skaven. I love me some Skaven campaigns. I'm happy to see that. They removed Tzeentch's Buyer Blood Pass, which I'm so sad about. That was the funniest bug. So, if you didn't know, Tzeentch had Buyer Blood, the Kislev passive, so when he broke, or when he got low leadership, he would go unbreakable, and it was the funniest thing to me. So I'm really sad they removed that. They gave Doomwells a little more mass, which will be nice. Chariots having more mass is always better. It increases their damage output and keeps them being stuck up a little bit, so that's nice, but the only Doomwell you're ever going to bring is Ikit, really, so I don't think that really changes how Skaven are going to play. Though it makes it a little slippery, more slippery and have a bit better damage output. Slaanesh. Okay, this is the big one. So Slaanesh, obviously been at the top of the meta. You'd think they'd nerf the shit out of them, just beat the hell out of them, right? Well, that's where you're going to be wrong. So Chaos Knights, again, all the Chaos Knights got buffed. Warshrine Mount got nerfed, which is good. The Mortise engine for Slaanesh is just stupid. Slaanesh doesn't need a strong Mortise engine. Chaos Warriors / Hell Scourges. This applies to, I think, also the... Okay, yeah, the Chosen also did the same thing. I think the Marauders as well. All the Hell Scourges now have an AP value. Previously, they were garbage because they had 0 AP. So they just couldn't deal with armor at all. Now they actually have a good portion of AP, though they did cost them a little bit of basic weapon damage. They lost about 2 overall weapon strength. That trade-off is fine, especially since they also got a cost decrease of 100. So Chaos Warriors / with Hell Scourges are actually pretty reasonable now. I've played a couple games with them now. They feel pretty good. They're definitely more of a tank unit. They're not a huge damage output, but if you need an anvil to just start, hammering with your cav, they're pretty good for that job. Also good, get rid of this stupid Mortise engine. Slaanesh doesn't need a Mortise engine. Nerf that shit, please. Now they can only bring 1 instead of having double Mortise engines. Chosen get the same treatment. They have AP now. They got a little cheaper. Overall good. Cultists of Slaanesh also got the mounted cost increase. Demon Prince got cheaper like all the others. Still don't know if you bring him very often. He's really big, flying, low armor, and doesn't have a lot of HP for Big Demon. So he's pretty hard to keep alive, actually, I've found. So he's still kind of a risk. So you probably stick to the more conventional options of Sigvald, Azazel, Nakari. And yeah, Hell Scourges, Marauders. Keeper of Secret got cheaper. This is the basic one, not the Exalted, not the Lord. This is the big monster. They removed the lore passive, which is actually a pretty big loss because that lore passive affected the entire army. So I feel like there's not a lot of reason to take this guy. Like there wasn't before. For 1800 gold, there probably still isn't now. If you want a sniping monster, you take a Soul Grinder. They're much better at that job. They have good anti-large bonus. They have so perfect musk, and they're armored. So if you want a sniping monster, just overall better. So I really see no reason to take the Keeper of Secrets. Its bound spells aren't very good, especially without the lore passive. The lore passive was the only reason you really wanted that at all. They just give melee attack to your entire army. And without that, there's really no reason to take a Keeper of Secrets ever. Mirror Guard, a bit more expensive, which is good. They're very well statted for their price, so it's not bad giving a little price increase. Hellstriders. Okay, the big one, and one everybody's been waiting for. They cost 50 more gold. Which is good. Like, that's a good price increase. But that feels like so little for a unit that has dominated the meta, both for Slaanesh and Warriors of Chaos. Like, this unit has been the defining feature of the meta for months at this point. 50 gold isn't going to change that. It's just not. Especially when you combine it with the fact that they buffed Hellstriders, the ones with the whips. So they gave them more base weapon damage and took away some AP, which, is a bit of a nerf. But they made them cheaper. So now both variants cost 650 gold. So you can still bring 8 Hellstriders for the same price that you already could. I see nothing wrong with this. And apparently CA doesn't either. Spawn got nerfed, which is good. Slaanesh spawn are probably the best spawn in the game. They're so perfect musk. So getting them nerfed is probably pretty good. That's campaign stuff. Oh no, this is not campaign stuff. So the Mortise engine effect on the Chaos War Shrines got nerfed by about a third, I think, at max. So 1632 down to 1224, which is really, really good. Chaos War Shrines are that's a huge nerf because of the ramp up mechanic where they have to be nearby when entities die. Basically take a lot longer for them to ramp up to a meaningful amount of damage because each percentage point is worth less now. It takes about 300 models to charge it up all the way. And previously, I meant 100 models will charge you up a third of the way, which is like, it's like 8 to 16 or whatever. Numbers are hard. Don't take those words for granted. Don't take those words for gospel. But now, that same 100 models will get you to like 4 to 8. So it's going to take a lot longer, and they have to be charged up all the way to actually have as much impact. So I think that's a huge nerf to Slaanesh War Shrines, which I am so excited about. Slaanesh does not need Mortise engines. So that's huge. That's the biggest nerf to Slaanesh, in my opinion. The Empire. I don't think anything got changed for you guys. That's in campaign. This is in campaign. This is campaign. Tomb Kings. Nothing. Yeah. I think they did fix the infinite ammo bug for Tomb Kings, which is actually a buff for them, because now it won't be banned in tournaments. and that lore passing gives just so much healing. The Restless Dead gives so much map-wide healing that just having it in the game, I think it's honestly might be bannable on its own because it's just so overpowered. It gives you so much map-wide healing to your entire army for such a low price. It's insane. It's one of the things that's just been boosting Tomb Kings to the top of the meta. They're already strong. I don't think this is going to make it worse. I think I skipped, actually, at the beginning, they did nerf Grumbling. I'll get to that. I'll go back to that in a second when I'm done with the factions. Tzeentch. They got the same as most everything else. Chaos Knights got nerfed. War Shrine cap. Demon Prince got cheaper. Doom Knights got a little cheaper, which is nice. Gives Tzeentch a little more Air Force options, but they already have strong Air Force, so I don't know. Could be nice. I like Doom Knights, so I'm happy to see this. Doom Knights are a lot of fun, so I don't mind that. ROR also did Lord of Change. Same as the Keeper, it just got cheaper and lost its lore passive. They're not a great melee duelist, so it's just this bound spells, but the bound spells are very obviously bound, so you don't get many casts of them, so I don't think there's much reason for that guy. Marauder Horseman cost 50 more gold, which is a thank you. Thank you. Make Skirmish Cav bad, please. Marauder Horseman Tzeentch are just one of the best Skirmish Cav in the game, probably the best Skirmish Cav in the game, with their barriers and the Warp Fire Contact effect. It's just so good, so having them cost a little more is well warranted. Happy to see it. This is a massive buff. Soul Grinders of Tzeentch were already very popular at the top level. Their shots are very, very strong against large targets and don't miss very often. They have a homing effect, so they're very, very hard to dodge. They were already taken in a ton of matchups. Having them 150 gold cheaper and with 50% more ammo, they are going to be an absolute terror. I suspect most Tzeentch builds now will have Soul Grinders in them, and they will be an absolute nightmare to deal with. Tzeentch spawn also got nerfed. Pretty good. The Severed Claw, the Aspiring Champions got extra HP. I think all Aspiring Champions did. We'll see in the Warriors of Chaos section. They got about 2,000 extra HP, which is a pretty big deal. I don't know if you take the ROR, they're just really expensive, but yeah, we'll talk about the basic ones when we get down there. Word Spawn got a correlating price increase. Sort of change. The Chaos Spawn summon on the Sorcerer Lord. It has a cooldown that only recharges when your Winds of Magic is over 15, which for Tzeentch, they won't be spamming out Blue Fire the entire game. So that actually will cause them to actually slow down on their magic spending a little bit, perhaps, or just have to sacrifice the summon, as well as getting a 50 gold increase, gold cost increase, which is pretty good. This isn't bad. The War Shrine now has infinite range, which is good because it only affects your caster, and as it was, your casters had to sit on top of it to get the effects, which felt bad. So now you might actually consider a Chaos War Shrine of Tzeentch, as well as it got double the spell mastery effect at max charge, but that's still a pretty meager buff for a 1,300 gold unit. So it's nice. It's a nice quality of life. I don't know if you'll ever see it in competitive play at present. Coast, nothing. Yeah, literally no changes. Counts, Banshees got actually fixed to be ethereal. They weren't before. They had a bit of base up and now they're fully AP, but that's it. No other counts nerfs aside from, like I said, they touched Crumbling. I'll get back to that once I get to the end, which we are almost there. Warriors of Chaos, Aspiring Champions all got more HP. This could actually be pretty big. Aspiring Champions weren't bad. Like, nobody used them that much, but they weren't bad. For a low model count infantry unit, their low model count made them resilient to things like artillery that tended to punish infantry or any explosive damage. So against matchups like dwarves with blasting charges or Tomb Kings with their screaming skull catapults, there were times you'd see Aspiring Champions taken in place of traditional infantry because they aren't punished by those explosive damage units as much. Having this much extra HP, that's a ton of extra HP. I can see Aspiring Champions becoming a pretty regular sight on the battlefield. That's a pretty big buff. Let's go to the Chaos Giant changes, Chaos Knight changes, Spawn changes, Trolls that we saw earlier. I think that's bigger for the Chaos Trolls. I think Chaos Trolls are better than the Norskin or the Greenskin Trolls. Because obviously Chaos Trolls with armor is pretty good, as well as they have AP. They're actually a pretty solid unit, especially with the price decrease. War Shrines go down. Demon Prince gets cheaper. Sigvald got a price increase, which is probably pretty good. Especially for land battles. Sigvald's always been a terror in land battles and that hasn't changed. He's also been a pretty popular pick for Slaanesh players in domination at the high levels. He's just very tanky, and he'll kill whatever gets in melee with him, basically, so that's not a bad change. And then the ROR Chaos Knights also got a change. Chaos War Shrine got buffed to give double the effect. Still don't know if you take it. It's just really expensive for what it does, though the leadership is quite nice. Maybe you take this with like a Chaos Troll build where the War Shrine does give a ton of leadership. It has Encourage as well as another ability gives like 10 or 12 leadership. So Fizz Resist going with leadership might be worth it if you're taking a Chaos Troll build, but you have to experiment with that. I think if you're going for a more standard skirmishy, infantry heavy build, you probably still skip it. Be'lakor nerfs. Hallelujah. Praise Sigmar. Shadow Shroud, his ward save goes down from 33 seconds to 20. Gives you much more time to punish him. It means it won't outlast so many nets anymore. The problem with it was that it outlasted most nets, Howling Warpgale, Net Amantok. So if you netted him and tried to shoot him, he would just pop his 40% ward save and walk away and just shrug off all the damage. This means you'll actually have a little more time to punish him, which I think is a good change, as well as making it more expensive. And then Lord of Torment, I'm not even sure which ability that is. I think that's the heal. Either way, in price increases, I think this is the one you always take. I think it's the heal. Price increase is good, make Be'lakor more expensive. He's really, really strong. That's all campaign. This is pretty big for Valkia. I don't know why this is under walk and not under, well, I guess she is walking campaign. So her Scarlet Armor, which is the lowering stats aura she has. Previously it charged up between, it only started affecting at 250 kills and got to reach its maximum effect at 500. Now that's down to 50 and 100, which is good because Valkia could never farm this many kills by herself. So now that item might actually be useful. You never took it before because she just couldn't farm that many kills. She was a small duelist, so she wanted to be sniping characters, not clearing chaff. Her spear ability could get some kills for her, but generally she was going to have to do it in melee on her own, and she just didn't farm that many kills in melee on her own because she wanted to be dueling characters. This means it's in a much more reachable position and can actually be farmed maybe just off the spear. So I don't know if you're still going to take that item, or I don't know if you'll start taking that item, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. What elves? I don't think they got changed. That's all campaign stuff, faction effects, lord effects. Hawk Rider's got Vanguard deploy. I don't know. I still think you probably don't want Hawk Riders. They're just not a very great unit. They don't do much damage. They're really squishy. Don't know if you take it still. And that's all the faction effects, but they changed. Let me find where they had it. Crumbling. So, in update 2.0, significantly buffed mage across undead races. Percent space healing made it really broken. Yep. So they increased the damage on Crumbling from 10 to 21 to 14 to 28. So that is, on paper, a nerf to Tomb King's Counts and Coast, all the undead factions, but that feels like such a minor nerf. Like, so the thing with Crumbling is, it only affects one model at a time. It has to kill off models one by one before it actually kills the entire unit. If this is applied to every model in the unit, that'd be a pretty big nerf. But one model, yeah, it's a little more damage, but not much. Crumbling units are still going to be really hard to remove from the battlefield. Like, that's just, I feel like that's such a minor buff, or minor nerf for a mechanic that's been really problematic lately. Like, all three of those factions are top tier. Tomb King's Counts and Coast are all top 6, I'd say. Like, Tomb Kings are probably the best. Counts are probably 3rd or 4th. And then Coast is 5th or 6th. Like, those factions could definitely use being knocked down a peg, and this just isn't going to do it, I don't think. That's just not enough damage to actually make Crumbling any kind of liability, especially when their leadership is actually high enough that they don't even trigger Crumbling very easily, so I'd like to see this number get bigger. Or actually affect every model in the unit and not just the one model. Anyway, I believe that is the majority of the multiplayer changes. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this helped you get a bit of insight into the changes we got going forward and what to look forward to in this next patch. Found it helpful, please drop a like. If you have other content you want to see me putting out, please let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more content like this, I'll be having more coming out in the coming weeks, so please make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. Thank you so much. See you next time.